Greetings from Costa Rica and welcome to today's live Friday real estate broadcast. My name is Matt Rosensteel and I am a Guanacaste real estate broker here in Playa Junquial. If you're interested in reaching out to me, my email address is matt@costaricamatt.com. Today, our topic is residency and real estate. This may not be exactly what everybody's expecting with this broadcast. I don't want to talk about specific residency types, and frankly, I'm not going to go into the details of how you apply and which program might be best for you. Instead, I want to think of real estate buyers, people who are thinking about purchasing in Costa Rica, whether or not they should also obtain residency. Because very often on my phone calls with prospective real estate clients, they're asking me, should I obtain residency? When should I do that, etc. And I'd love to answer those questions once and for all today. So to give a quick agenda of what we're going to go over today, we'll be, first of all, asking the question sort of why get residency? What are the pros of residency in the first place? Second of all, I do want to talk about COVID-19. There was an interesting residency scenario, and for some people, that's a motivation to get residency. So I just want to quickly touch on those scenarios or what happened in COVID. I do want to then go to what you as a buyer should consider in weighing whether or not you should get residency. And finally, fourth, I'm going to go over two of my favorite new listings. We've got a beachfront condo and Casa Blue Zone, which is located only 300 yards from a beach, that I want to talk about a little bit just to put some real estate in there as well. So stay tuned to take a quick peek at those listings at the end of our broadcast here. So let's first and foremost, I did want to mention thank you to all my real estate clients out there, the people who pick up the phone or decide to email me and hire me. I serve the areas that go from Playa Potrero up in the north all the way down through Playa Junquial and a bit further south to Marbella. If you're interested in those particular areas or anywhere in between, that is the stretch of coast along which I can be of service to you, whether you are buying or selling property here in Guanacaste. And again, you can reach me by emailing me at matt@costaricamatt.com. And before I start, I will also mention if you're looking for answers to 20 of the most basic Costa Rica real estate questions, you can visit costaricamatt.com and hit the blue VBook button. And download my VBook, which is a digital resource answering most of the most basic questions regarding Costa Rica real estate with some market overviews, etc. Let's get started today talking about our question, residency and real estate. I will also touch a little bit on the question that Ahmed brought up and hopefully get around to summer love as well. Thanks for those who have submitted questions. If you're watching live, feel free to put one in there and I will have no hesitation veering off topic at some point when I notice it to answer. So why do people want to get residency in the first place? A lot of you who've been watching out there or who do a lot of watching Costa Rica probably have a good idea of the benefits. But essentially, residency in Costa Rica, and again, this is just in the general sense, it's not for any specific program, any specific modality, investor status, etc. Essentially residency enables you to stay here longer than your current 6-month visa. It gives you free access to Costa Rica's healthcare system. Well, rather free in the sense that you've paid into a healthcare system. And it also provides somewhat easier processes for some bureaucratic instances, like at the bank or opening a corporation, etc. Some things can be a little bit more smooth if you're a resident versus just a tourist visiting here or doing what they call the perpetual tourism, where you come in and out of the country for years and years. Obviously, for some people, there are also tax benefits if they're relocating to Costa Rica and they need to They absolutely must gain residency due to their company in the US needing them to relocate, or some kind of tax structure that they're setting up to avoid one or more obligations. But those three general pros are the main things that you get out of residency. One thing I did want to note as well is that, some people bring up, well, what happens if we go into a scenario like COVID-19 again? To give you a quick overview of what happened in 2020, Costa Rica shut down its borders in March of 2020 to international non-resident arrivals. So a lot of people say, well, tourists weren't allowed into the country at that point. What would have happened if I were a property owner and I didn't have residency? I want to be clear that when Costa Rica shut down its borders, first of all, it was not a 12-hour, there was absolutely no time to get into the country if you needed to. Second of all, Costa Rica allowed any tourists who were currently in the country to essentially stay here throughout the entire COVID-19 shutdown. So their policy in that scenario, yes, it did mean that if you were not a resident, you couldn't get back to your property during the shutdown. However, they did just extend visas for tourists that were here in the country and really said you can stay here as long as you want, as long as you don't leave the country. So in context, I do think if people are worried about future scenarios where, the Costa Rica government might kick out tourists if they were shutting down their borders, we at least have the COVID example where rather than kicking out tourists, they essentially said you can stay here, and those of the folks who were actually in the country when the emergency started weren't forced to leave. So that wouldn't necessarily be as big of a possible benefit as one might imagine, given that tourists were allowed to also remain in the country. So let's talk about what I think buyers, if you're considering moving to Guanacaste, what should you really know and consider about residency here in Costa Rica? How should you make this decision as to whether you should apply for it? Well, let's go back first and foremost to that pros list. For every pro, you will see that there's actually an associated difficulty, or that it's not as great as it might seem. So first of all, I want to talk about, I will talk about staying here longer than 6 months in a moment. Your free access to healthcare, as I mentioned on point number 2, you will be paying into the Costa Rica Social Security system in order to get that access to the healthcare system. And now I'm realizing I've had the music on the whole time. Sorry for that playing in the background, folks. I meant to turn that off earlier. So you've got access to their public healthcare system. Yes, as a person obtaining residency here, you will have paid for it through monthly contributions to the Social Security system. And if there's anything that could be the biggest drawback about obtaining residency in Costa Rica, that's going to be the primary negative. From the moment you get it, you need to be paying into the Costa Rica Social Security system, and that's a liability of residency. Frankly, I will say Costa Rica's public healthcare system, yes, it's not the greatest healthcare system on earth, and it has plenty of problems as well. For life-saving emergencies, the emergency rooms, the facilities that they have are great by Central American standards, and they do have some different facilities that are really nice. However, public healthcare down here, if you wanted to depend on it for your only access to healthcare, you're going to find that it's much slower, and at times it can be dangerously slow if you're dealing with some kind of chronic condition. So you don't see many foreigners actually taking advantage of that access to public healthcare, because if it's something really urgent, like let's say a tumor, they're going to go to a private option and immediately try to move things forward as fast as possible. On the other hand, if it's something small, you can also get much faster private care here than driving a ways to what can be a distance to get to a public hospital. So that access to public health care definitely has its strings attached and isn't as great of a benefit as it might seem. Second of all, you'd also, the easier bureaucratic processes. Honestly, that is a very negligible difference between the difficulty of bureaucratic processes in Costa Rica with or without your residency. All kinds of things your bank runs, getting your corporation set up, keeping your corporation legal, filing taxes. All of these bureaucratic things are going to involve a lot of either time or money on your part, and residency won't necessarily provide that noticeable of a difference in any one single form. Let's talk about that 6-month visa, which is really the most important part. Residency allows you to stay here longer than your current 6-month visa. Now, let's be clear that 6-month applies to the group one of, Costa Rica's partners, allies, et cetera, the people from countries around the world like the United States, Canada, most of Europe, et cetera. Everyone can come into Costa Rica and get your 6-month visa as a tourist. Now, these visas are given at the discretion of the entry agent, meaning they do have some ability to give you a shorter visa. And I want to provide an important hack if you are trying to ensure you get a 180-day visa, even if you don't necessarily intend to leave the country after 100, or rather, even if you don't necessarily plan to use your travel plans that you come into the border with. Let me go back. So there's a requirement that to enter Costa Rica, you do need to have proof, if you're a tourist, of your exit travel plans. Honestly, that can be something that sometimes the customs agent won't ask you to see any of it. There are other times when the customs agent handling your entry will say, I need to see everything and I want to know more about your hotel, etc. Now, when they ask to see this proof that you are going to leave the country, there are a lot of people who you're coming down for 6 months and maybe you plan to eventually renew your visa one way or another, but you just haven't made those plans yet. Be sure when you come in that if you're going to present the gate agent with some kind of, the customs agent with some kind of proof that you're leaving the country, make that proof on a date that is nearly 6 months from now. There are bus tickets for sale at the Nicaragua border that some people use in order as their proof to get out of the country. A lot of people have plane tickets that may be refundable or that they don't really intend on using. You need to have a plane ticket with a date that is 6 months from now. So in the case, to be honest, what you do see is when these agents give fewer days on the visa, frequently it's because they've seen the return travel plans and it says, oh, this person is leaving in a week from now. And so the agent says, okay, well, you only need a 30-day visa, and they will change that. That's the reason. Make sure that you have what look to be 6-month travel plans to leave Costa Rica again. And then really, I haven't met or ever been in a circumstance where an entry agent would not give you the 6 months if you hadn't been planning to leave until 5.5 months from now. So just be sure, no matter what your travel plans look like, that they're about 6 months, and you should get that 6-month visa. So to go back to what buyers should know. When it comes to residency, it's important to consider the huge percentage of US, Canadian expats, foreigners who move to Costa Rica who are not going to end up living here permanently. Unfortunately, Costa Rica, fortunately, Costa Rica is not a place where everybody on earth will want to live permanently. There are different statistics that you see on the web as to what percentage of foreigner will be leaving after 5 years here in Costa Rica. Well, I'm willing to verify that it is more than half. And this even includes people who obtained their residency. You see all the time people who have moved to Costa Rica and they've changed their lives forever. And I see a lot of those people leaving maybe 6 or 7 years later. So they might have taken 2 or 3 years to apply for residency, which, by the way, also has its costs in terms of thousands of dollars and hours invested. They will have then really only enjoyed that residency from maybe 2 or 3 years in their stay until 7 years when they finally decide that this isn't where they want to be permanently. And, eventually they've actually gone back to and from their home country during that time, where, to be honest, I've met very few foreigners, almost zero, who spend any length of time here that is longer than 6 months without taking a trip either to their home country or going up to Nicaragua or Panama, whether they're motivated by a visa or not. 6 months is a long, solid block of time to be in another country, especially one that you've just moved to. And frankly, since it's the chief benefit of residency to stay here longer than 6 months, and since I see almost no one doing it, my highest recommendation, what I'd strongly suggest that everyone do, is put off your residency question entirely until you're actually here and you actually love it, and you're feeling like you need to invest that time, energy, and your bureaucratic processes here in Costa Rica getting residency. Again, I would highly suggest waiting until you're here, living in Costa Rica, and you've determined that this is something that you want to extend to a longer-term relationship. And that's when you should begin your residency process and adopt all of those things that come along with the process moving forward. Ahmed had asked before we started, and I'm very glad that he did. He's sort of considering whether or not to apply for residency. And his big question was about the time involved. This is a very good question. And while I can't give specific answers on the number of hours, and I don't want to go over that nuanced process, what I do want to say is residency, like many things in Costa Rica, is a service where you will absolutely get what you pay for. And the amount of time that you personally have to invest in this whole process will be inversely correlated to the amount of money that you spend on a professional who is going to help you through the process. If you do the right thing and hire a total professional, someone who might charge, I don't know, a few $1,000s to assist you, if you wait to find someone with really great recommendations and invest in them, the residency process is very easy. There are only a couple of in-person things that you will have to do. And your attorney, this person helping you through the immigration process, is going to do everything else. So I would say if you are 100% on a dime and nickel budget and you really have to watch every penny, it would be another worrisome thing to try and tackle the residency process as cheaply as possible. To me, residency is something that you should absolutely pay good money to obtain and to have someone else largely handle. It is entirely possible to do it yourself. I have, my wife and I filed out our own papers and did everything. We had the benefit of being fluent in Spanish. We also had the benefit of the program that we were working through, which was through our kids, or being related to Costa Rican citizens. And it still was a lot of running around and all kinds of interesting trips to different ministries. In fact, the first day we filed for residency, Jonas, our oldest son, was about 2 weeks old and in a Bjorn on my stomach. And I remember us going around to 15 different places in Liberia to get that application in. Let's look. We've got Paul has been contributing. Greatly appreciated, Paul, hopping in there and answering questions for me. I see Kurt tuned in today. Kurt and George, hope you're doing well. And finally, Burke. Some people are tax trapped in their home country, must spend 183 days. Oof. If you are tax trapped in your country and you must spend 183 days there, yes, that could be a totally separate incentive for your residency here. And yeah, Burke, if people need to do that to escape their tax residency, obviously that's one of the sort of scenarios where you just need to apply for it. And whereas the other considerations don't come into play as much. We've been waiting 18 months and I just met an interview resident. Yeah, Paul, you're only at 18 months at this point. And Paul, I know that your process with Costa Rica has been even longer than that. So it'll be interesting to hear when you get your residency finally. And I'd also be interested to hear if you're happy with the provider you're working with, or if you've had one of those experiences where you feel like you're doing all the work and not necessarily getting good results. Let's wrap up here with some real estate, folks. I really want to just go over a couple of new listings on the market that are some of my favorites. You may know that beachfront condos in Guanacaste are exceedingly rare. That's because the Costa Rica government, basically limited development right along the coast back in the 70s. And when you find a beachfront condo, not only are they extremely rare, but they're just going to be very scarce assets if they are titled, clearly owned condos without any sort of issue happening. And this one is, I am simply trying to get over to the link here. Here we go. Las Brisas, number 6 is the beachfront condo I want to talk to you about. This complex only has 18 units, and it's one of the quietest spots actually on the Pacific. You would see that a lot of the beachfront development in Costa Rica is in places like Jaco, where you've got a lot of energy on the beach. Tamarindo is another example. This is down in Playa Junquial, where the beach rarely gets visited by anyone except for a few turtles and the fishermen who go down to the river mouth at the south end of this beach. Super peaceful location. Again, it's titled. There are extremely few condos that are truly beachfront. And this complex, Las Brisas, is a really well-administered complex. They've done a roof replacement. They've maintained the pool. All kinds of positive things that show that they are an HOA that actually takes care of their facilities. And Las Brisas number 6 at $460,000 is one of the very few condos that are beachfront and under $500,000 in Costa Rica at the moment. Again, if you want to know more about that condo, be sure to email me at matt@costaricamatt.com. And we also have a new listing that is only 300 yards walk from the beach. I did it the other day backwards, and it took me exactly 6 minutes. So this is an extremely short walk to the beach here. We're talking about Casa Blue Zone. Casa Blue Zone is basically as close to the water as you can get without going into Costa Rica's maritime zone. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home. You may recognize it. I actually did sell it to its current owner about, I think, 5-6 years ago, in that range. He's deciding, actually, he's met some Costa Ricans over the years that he's going to build a house on their property. That's going to be his go-to location in Costa Rica. And now he's reselling Casa Blue Zone. You've got neighbors that are already built on 3 sides of you, and they are finishing up the construction on the other side. This is in the Palma Azul neighborhood that I had been talking about on my channel years ago. The owner has added this really nice porch on one side of the home as a screened-in space. You still have this area out here to work with. You could easily frame this and screen it in, or put a little plunge pool out there. But again, you can hear the waves from Casa Blue Zone. It's on an 830 square meter lot, and it is very close to the beach. With an asking price of $425,000, I think you will not find many homes that are of comparable quality and comparable distance to the beach as Casa Blue Zone. So again, be sure to send me an email if you'd like to know more about that. Kurt, thanks so much for posting that in the comments as well. Greatly appreciate that. If anyone out there has any further questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. Again, it's been a pleasure. Folks, I'll be back next Friday, August 29th, with something else. Have a good weekend. Take care. Pura vida, and pura vida again, I guess.